Some legends don't wait for permission. They rise early, they move fast, and before the world is ready, they become unforgettable. Here is the exact age Black legends became famous. 1. Prince. At just 19, he released his debut album and played multiple instruments himself. By 21, he was already rewriting the rules of sound and style, fearless, original, unmatched. He passed away in 2016 at the age of 57, but his influence remains timeless. 2. Malcolm X. In his early 20s, his life was transforming through discipline and belief. By 21, he had begun the journey that would shake a nation. Powerful voice, fearless message. He was assassinated in 1965 at the age of 39, but his words still echo across generations. 3. Whitney Young Jr. In his early 20s, he was already pursuing leadership and social change. By 21, his path towards civil rights activism was becoming clear, strategic, influential, determined. He passed away in 1971 at the age of 49. His impact remains historic. 4. Ludacris. At just 21, he was building his voice in Atlanta's music scene. By his early 20s, his charisma was impossible to ignore. Energetic, sharp, unforgettable. In 2026, Ludacris is 48 years old and still active in music and film. 5. Brandy. At just 15, she released her debut album. By 21, she was already called the vocal Bible. Smooth tone, timeless presence. In 2026, Brandy is 47 years old and continues to influence R&B. 6. Lauryn Hill. At just 21, she helped shape the sound of the Fugees. Her voice was powerful. Her lyrics were fearless. Before 25, she had already reshaped hip-hop and R&B. In 2026, Lauryn Hill is 51 years old and remains a cultural icon. 7. Spike Lee. In his early 20s, he was studying film with relentless focus. By 21, his vision was already bold and unapologetic. Years later, that vision would change cinema forever. In 2026, Spike Lee is 69 years old and still shaping storytelling in Hollywood. 8. Nicki Minaj. At just 21, she was building her style and sharpening her flow. Fearless, animated, unforgettable. Before 25, she had already taken over the rap world. In 2026, Nicki Minaj is 43 years old and still a dominant force in music. 9. Allen Iverson. At just 21, he entered the NBA with explosive energy. Fast, fearless, revolutionary. He changed the culture of basketball forever. In 2026, Allen Iverson is 51 years old and remains an icon of the sport. 10. John Legend. In his early 20s, he was already writing songs behind the scenes. By 21, his talent was undeniable, soulful, timeless, refined. In 2026, John Legend is 47 years old and an EGOT winner. 11. Michael Ealy. In his early 20s, he was studying acting with quiet determination. By 21, he had already committed to mastering the screen, calm presence, intense focus. In 2026, Michael Ealy is 53 years old and remains a respected name in film and television. 12. Kiera. At just 21, she was already dominating charts with goodies, smooth moves, confident energy, undeniable star power. Before 25, she had already become an R&B staple. In 2026, Kiera is 41 years old and still influencing music and fashion. 13. Deion Sanders. At just 21, his athleticism was already unmatched. Fast, flashy, fearless. He would go on to dominate 2 professional sports. In 2026, Deion Sanders is 59 years old and still leading from the sidelines. 14. Fantasia. In her early 20s, she stepped onto a national stage with raw emotion. Her voice was powerful, her presence unforgettable. Before 25, she had already inspired millions. In 2026, Fantasia is 42 years old and still captivating audiences. 15. Method Man. At just 21, he was already building a legendary presence in hip-hop, smooth delivery, commanding voice. Before 25, he had helped shape the golden era of rap. In 2026, Method Man is 55 years old and still respected across music and television. 16. Lenny Kravitz. In his early 20s, he was blending rock, funk, and soul into something new. By 21, his sound was already fearless and different, cool, creative, unapologetic. In 2026, Lenny Kravitz is 62 years old and still a global rock icon. 17. Keke Palmer. At just 21, she was already a recognizable face in film and television, confident, versatile, driven. Before 25, she had built a powerful career foundation. In 2026, Keke Palmer is 33 years old and continues to rise. 18. Common. In his early 20s, he was sharpening his pen with poetic precision, thoughtful, reflective, authentic. Before 25, he had already earned respect in hip-hop circles. In 2026, Common is 54 years old and an Oscar-winning artist. 19. Naomi Campbell. At just 21, she was already walking the biggest runways in the world, elegant, bold, trailblazing. She helped redefine global beauty standards. In 2026, Naomi Campbell is 56 years old and remains a fashion icon. 20. Terrence Howard. In his early 20s, he was building his presence in independent films. By 21, his intensity was already noticeable, serious, focused, compelling. In 2026, Terrence Howard is 57 years old and known for powerful performances. 21. Dave Chappelle. At just 21, he was already performing stand-up with fearless honesty. Sharp mind, bold delivery, unfiltered truth. Before 25, he had already become one of the most talked-about young comedians. In 2026, Dave Chappelle is 53 years old and still one of comedy's most powerful voices. 22. Mary J. Blige. At just 21, she released her debut album and changed the sound of R&B raw emotion, honest lyrics, unmatched soul. Before 25, she had already become the queen of hip-hop soul. In 2026, Mary J. Blige is 55 years old and still a defining voice in music. 23. Cuba Gooding Jr. In his early 20s, he was already landing roles that showcased his charisma, energetic, expressive, dynamic. Before 25, his presence on screen was undeniable. In 2026, Cuba Gooding Jr. is 58 years old and remains a recognizable Hollywood name. 24. Tyra Banks. At just 21, she was already dominating international runways, confident, poised, trailblazing. She opened doors for a new generation of models. In 2026, Tyra Banks is 52 years old and still influential in fashion and media. 25. Akin. In his early 20s, he was building a sound that blended cultures and rhythm, distinct voice, global vision. Before 25, he had already introduced a new wave in music. In 2026, Akin is 53 years old and remains active in music and business. Age doesn't wait. Success doesn't wait. And sometimes, greatness begins long before the world is watching. Which legend surprised you the most?